Imagine waking up every day with a lighter mind, without that flood of negative thoughts that drain your energy and steal your peace. Imagine being able to face any situation without your own mind sabotaging you, without getting stuck in a cycle of doubts, fears, and insecurities. It seems impossible, right? But it's not. Regaining control over what you think and how you feel stays with me until the end, because once you understand this, you will never see your thoughts in the same way again. But before you start, I want you to do something. Write it in the comments. Today, I take one more step towards my best version. Do it with intention, because when you write, your subconscious absorbs the message and programs itself, so that your actions today are aligned with this continuous improvement. This small step is more important than it seems and can help you move towards the person you want to become. Let's start number 1, accepting thoughts instead of fighting them. Accepting thoughts instead of fighting them is one of the most powerful principles of Stoicism. It's not about ignoring them or repressing them, but about observing them serenely, without identifying with them or letting ourselves be carried away by their current. The human mind is a constant flow of ideas, some disturbing, others comforting but fleeting. Intend that we will only have positive thoughts or thoughts that we can eliminate completely. Negative ones are a losing battle. The key is not to eradicate them, but to learn to live with them without them dominating us. The Stoics taught that our perception of events is what determines our emotional response. Epictetus said that what happens doesn't affect us, but rather the way we interpret it. If a negative thought appears in our mind and we resist it with force, we can only give it more power. It's like trying to calm the water in a lake by striking it with just our hands. We generate more turbulence. On the other hand, if we accept it, if we let it be without feeding it with fear or rejection, it will eventually lose its impact and pass like a cloud in the sky. Modern psychology has reached conclusions similar to those of the Stoics. Acceptance and commitment therapy is based on the idea that trying to control or negative thoughts only increases their persistence. Studies have shown that accepting the presence of these thoughts without fighting them reduces anxiety and depression, is an approach that invites non-judgmental observation, acceptance, instead of resistance. When we stop fighting our mind, it finds its own balance. This means that when a negative thought appears, instead of panicking or trying to expel it, we simply must recognize it. Here is that thought. We could tell ourselves we don't need to label it as good or bad, nor try to change it. This also doesn't mean we should resign or surrender to it, but just accept it as a visitor that comes and goes. What is important is not the thought itself, but what we do with it. For example, if the idea arises in our mind that we are not good enough to achieve something, the Stoic approach leads us to see it as a simple thought, not as an absolute truth. We can notice its presence without letting ourselves be trapped by it, instead of arguing internally or trying to convince ourselves otherwise. We can simply say, "It is interesting that my mind produced that thought," and then we continue with our actions without allowing, "Let this idea define our reality." Negative thoughts lose their power when we stop identifying with them. This clearly you have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. We cannot prevent certain thoughts from arising, but we can decide how to respond to them. Acceptance allows us to remain calm and move forward without getting stuck in a futile fight against our own mind over time. By practicing this attitude, we realize that the thoughts that once seemed overwhelming people lose their intensity. We learn to see them from a distance without getting emotionally involved. Just as a river flows without resistance, our mind learns to let go of what previously disturbed us. We become more serene, more resilient, more free. Accepting thoughts does not mean we should believe them, nor act according to what they say. It means recognizing their existence without giving them control over our lives. If we manage to do this, we will discover that mental peace does not come from the absence of negative thoughts, but our ability to live with it without fear. Number 2, using breathing and posture to change your emotional state. The way you use your body defines how you feel. It's not just your mind that influences your emotional state. Your body has a huge impact on the way you experience the world. The Stoics knew this. They observed posture breathing and the way in which every situation, first with the body, then with the mind. If you flinch, you breathe in a shallow and choppy way. You avoid the eye contact. Your mind will interpret this as a sign of danger, as if there is something to worry about. But if you stand upright, breathe calmly and deeply, adopt a firm and open posture, your mind will receive a different message, the message that you have control, that you are ready to fly. Marcus Aurelius talked about standing firm in the face of adversity, not only in thought, but also in the way we position our body, because emotion does not exist separate from physiology. You can test this now. Even if you sit hunched over, shrug your shoulders, and breathe quickly and superficially, you will notice that it is easier to feel anxiety. On the other hand, if you lift your head, relax your shoulders, and breathe deeply and evenly, you will feel an immediate change. Cortisol, the stress hormone, but deep breathing with an emphasis on inhalation activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which tells your body that it is safe, that there is no threat, that it can think clearly. Posture is also essential. Research has revealed that adopting expansive postures, such as the superhero posture with hands on hips and back straight, increases testosterone levels and reduces cortisol. This translates into more confidence and less fear, i.e., simply changing the way you use your body can alter the body's chemistry, your brain, and with that your emotional state. If in a moment of anxiety or insecurity you find yourself stuck in negative thoughts, don't try to combat them with more thoughts. Instead, change your body. Take a deep breath, keep your back straight, place your feet firmly on the floor and look straight ahead. You will notice that your mind responds immediately to this physiological change. You don't need words to convince yourself that you have control. Your body will already be saying this to your brain. The Stoics believed in the ought mastery, and an essential part of this mastery is the way we manage our physical presence. It is not just about what we think, but about how we position ourselves in the world. Epictetus said that we should not cower in the face of adversity, but face it firmly, because if your body is prepared, your mind will follow it. This is not something that you do once, and that's it. It is a discipline. Like everything else in Stoicism, it is something that must be practiced every day. In every moment of stress or doubt, you have the opportunity to use your physiology. Your favor does not need to depend on motivation or wait for your mind. Decide to feel better. Just adjust your posture. Take a deep breath. Keep calm. Let your body teach your mind how it should feel over time. This becomes a habit. You stop being a victim of your emotions because you have learned to control it through your own body. Fear decreases stress, reduces confidence, grows, and in every challenging situation, in every moment of doubt, you will always have this tool with you. You don't need anything external, just from the discipline of using your body consciously. Like the Stoics faced life firmly with control, with a presence that does not bend in the face of uncertainty. And so you can also number negative thoughts. Negative thoughts do not arise randomly. They follow predictable patterns. The mind tends to repeat the same mistakes, falling into the same logical traps, time after time, if you don't question them. If you don't identify them, they drag you along without you noticing. But when you start observing them with attention, realize that they always follow similar structures. You can classify them, understand them, and most importantly, weaken them. Marco Aurelio wrote in his Meditations that many of our worries are the result of wrong perceptions. What distresses us is not what happens, but the interpretation we give to events. The mind manufactures stories, exaggerates problems, sees threats where they don't exist, sometimes generalizes, I always fail. I never do anything right. Other times, I fall into black and white thinking, if I'm not the best, then I am a complete failure. These distortions do not reflect reality, but if you accept them without questioning, they become your truth. Modern psychology confirmed what the Stoics already knew. Cognitive therapy identified distorted thought patterns that feed anxiety and depression, excessive generalization, catastrophism, dichotomous thinking, negative filter. They are the same errors as Marco Aurelio and Epitaph in their writings. When we fall into them, our mind deceives us. It makes us believe that the problem is bigger than it really is, but if we can identify and classify them, they lose strength over us. Think about a negative thought that repeats itself in your life. Maybe when you fail at something, your mind says, I'm useless. What kind of mistake is that? It's an excessive generalization, because a single failure doesn't define your value as a person. Or maybe you think, if I don't do it perfectly, then it's no use. This is black and white, thinking a distortion that prevents you from seeing the nuances of reality. When you classify a negative thought, you separate it from itself. It stops being an absolute truth and becomes just a logical error. Instead of sinking into it, you can observe it with detachment. Oh, here it is, again, the generalization. You can really say. And when you see it for what it really is, it loses strength. You don't need to argue with the thought or try to eliminate it. Just recognize it and label the ones that disturb us. But the opinion we have about them, if you learn to question these opinions, to realize when your mind is falling into a repetitive pattern, begins to regain control. This does not mean that you will never have negative thoughts again, but rather that they will not affect you in the same way. This is an exercise that you can practice every day. When a negative thought arises, do not accept it. Immediately ask yourself which category it fits into. Is it an exaggeration? It is an absolutist thought. It is a hasty conclusion. The more you practice this classification, the faster you will detect these errors and the less impact they will have on your emotions. Over time, you will notice a change. Thoughts that would previously have left you stuck in worry now pass without affecting you. You learn to see them for what they really are. Mental constructs, not absolute truths. And instead of reacting impulsively to them, you respond calmly and clearly. This is the power of Stoic observation. It is not about avoiding negative thoughts or fighting them, but understanding their nature. See them objectively, because when you understand them, they lose control over you. And that's when you find true freedom. Number 4, writing and externalizing negative thoughts. Writing negative thoughts is a powerful tool. What is not named controls us. What is expressed loses strength. When anxiety or sadness invades you, put them into words. Write without filter, without censorship, without worrying about grammar or coherence. Let them flow from your mind to paper as if you were emptying a glass full of cloudy water. It doesn't matter if the thoughts are dark, irrational, or exaggerated. The important thing is to get them out of your head and make them visible when you write them. You will see them for what they really are, thoughts, not absolute truths. The mind is a chaotic narrator that often repeats stories of fear, failure, and hopelessness. But when you write, you become the observer of these stories and not their victim. You will realize that many of these thoughts have no real basis. They are assumptions, distortions of reality, perhaps exaggeration about situations that never even happened, or memories that have been deformed by time and emotion, science confirms. This exercise, studies show that expressive writing reduces stress, improves mental health, and even strengthens the immune system. Writing about what torments you allows you to process these feelings in a structured way, is a way of giving shape to internal chaos. What used to be a whirlwind of loose thoughts is now stuck on a sheet of paper with limits, with a beginning and an end. And when something has form, it is easier to deal with it. Take the test now. Take a piece of paper and write down the thoughts that most resonate with you. Torment. Don't judge them. Just let them out like you're emptying a disorganized drawer. Don't try to pretty it up or give them Logic, just put them out later when you're done. Look at what you've written and give those thoughts a name, but not just any name. Choose a name that makes you laugh a little, that takes the weight off what you feel. If your anxiety tells you you're a failure, call that thought the movie critic relentless. If your mind insists that no one loves you, name that thought, like the horror movie that never happened. Naming your thoughts takes away the mystery and power they have over you. This simple act of externalization transforms your relationship with your mind. You are no longer a hostage to your thoughts. You no longer take them as absolute truths. Now they are just words written on a sheet, stories that you can read and question. And when you realize that it is not your thoughts, but the one who observes them, you gain power over them. This is the first step towards mental freedom in practice. Stoic writing has a fundamental role. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote in his diary every night, not to share with others, but to organize his mind. His meditations were a dialogue with himself, a way of clarifying his thoughts and maintaining serenity. In the midst of chaos, writing was his way of distancing himself from emotions and seeing them more. Do the same. Do not wait to be overcome by anxiety to write. Make it a daily habit as an exercise in mental hygiene. Write your worries, your fears, your recurring thoughts. And then when you read them, question, this is really true. I have some evidence of this. If a friend told me this, I would agree with him. Stoicism teaches us that the mind can be our best ally or our worst enemy, and writing is a way of training it to teach us that not everything we think, it is true. If you turn this into a habit, you will notice a profound change. Negative thoughts will continue to arise because this is part of human nature, but they will not affect you in the same way. You will learn to see them, recognize them, and let them pass without them dragging you with them. You will learn that you are not your thoughts, that your mind can say many things, but you have the power to decide which ones to believe, which ones discard anxiety and depression, feed on mental chaos. Writing brings order to this chaos, is an act of power, a reminder that you have more control over your mind than you realize. So don't hesitate. Write, express, name your thoughts, and little by little you will see how they will lose their hold on you. Number 5. Read the thoughts and thank them. When you read your negative thoughts out loud, something curious happens. What before it seemed like an invisible monster now has form, sound, words. And in that moment, instead of rejecting it or fighting against it, you do something unexpected. Give it thanks. Thank you, mind, for bringing me this concern. Thank you for reminding me of this fear, not because you agree with what it says, but because you recognize its intention. The mind, by its very nature, tries to protect you, even if it sometimes do this in a disorganized, chaotic, exaggerated way. Thanking the mind for its thoughts is an act of control. Instead of panicking or getting lost in a cycle of negativity, you take the initiative. You are not a slave to your mind, but rather its observer. And when you say thank you, you are taking away the power that these thoughts had over you. You are not reacting with fear or rejection, but with acceptance. Thank you for trying to help me, but I decide what to do with this information. This is not naive optimism. It is a strategy backed by science. Acceptance and commitment therapy teaches that fighting thoughts only strengthens them. The more you try to block or ignore a negative thought, the more persistent it becomes. But when you accept it and give it grace, you disarm it. It stops being a threat and becomes just an idea, a set of words that alone have no real power over you. Take the test right now. Read out loud one of the negative thoughts you wrote. Hear yourself saying it. Then take a deep breath and say, "Thank you for bringing me this watch." What happens? Maybe at first you will feel resistance because your instinct is to want to erase these thoughts. But if you repeat this exercise a few times, you will notice a change. Instead of feeling trapped in negativity, you will start to see these thoughts for what they really are. Fragments of your mind, not absolute truths. Imagine that your mind is like a poorly trained assistant. It wants to warn you about all possible dangers, even the unreal ones. It wants to remind you of past mistakes, fear about the future, unresolved concerns. Their intention is not bad, but their execution is clumsy. And if every time this assistant brings up a thought you shout at him or reject him, he will continue to insist on the other hand. If you give him thanks, he teaches you that you don't need to repeat the same thing all the time. You have already received the message, but it is you who decides how to act. The Stoics understood this dynamic well. Epictetus said that it is not things that disturb us, but the opinion we have about them. Negative thoughts do not bother us. They hurt because they exist. What hurts us is the way we react to them. When we see them as threats, they control us. But when we see them as simple messages from the mind, we can choose to ignore them or respond calmly. This exercise in gratitude also helps you develop equanimity. Instead of seeing negative thoughts as enemies, you see them as messengers instead of fighting them. You receive them and move on, and little by little with practice, you realize that these thoughts no longer affect you like they used to. Continue arising because that's how the mind works, but their impact lessens. They no longer paralyze you. They no longer consume you. So the next time your mind brings up a negative thought, stop for a moment, read it out loud, listen to it without judging, and then simply say, thank you for reminding me of this, and go on with your day. Because you are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them, the one who decides what to do with them. And in that recognition, you find true freedom. Number 6, neuroplasticity allows reprogram your brain. Your brain is not set in stone. You are not a slave to your thoughts or your emotions. Neuroplasticity changes everything. It means your brain adapts, evolves, learns no matter how long you spent, stuck in patterns of anxiety, anger, or negativity, no matter if you reacted with fear or despair. For years you can train. It can change the way you think, feel, and respond to the world. Imagine that your mind is like a path in the middle of a forest. If you have always walked along the same path, the path is well marked. This is the path of the impulsive reaction, of fear, of constant worry. But neuroplasticity allows you to open new paths if you decide to walk a different route. At first, it will be difficult. The path is not clear, it is not well marked. But if you continue walking this new path day after day, it will become stronger, and with time, the old path will begin to disappear. This is how your brain works. Science proves this. Neuroimaging studies show that positive thinking activates the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation. At the same time, reduces the activity of the amygdala, which is the region linked to fear and emotional age. In other words, by training your mind, you strengthen the areas that help you stay calm and weaken those that generate anxiety and stress. Always in the same way, you can reprogram your response. You can decide how to process what happens to you. You don't control the outside world, but you can train your mind so that it is not an enemy, but an ally. There are practical techniques to do this. Meditation and mindfulness are concrete exercises to strengthen self-control and reduce emotional reactivity. It is not something mystical nor complicated. It is simply training your brain to observe thoughts without being swept away by them. When you meditation trains the focus muscle. Learn to notice when your mind wants to pull you into worry, but instead of following it, you just observe and let it go. Each time you do this, it strengthens the neural connections that help you stay calm. Another method is the conscious use of language. What you say to yourself creates neural pathways. If you constantly repeat, "I can't handle this," or "this is too much for me," it's reinforcing the path of helplessness. But if you start saying, "I can handle this," "I've overcome challenges before this," it too will pass. It will be creating a new path in your mind. This is not self-deception. This mental training does not ignore reality. It just teaches you to choose a way of responding that strengthens you instead of weakening you. The Stoics practiced this mental training every day. Marco Aurelio, in his Meditations, he wrote reflections to remind himself that everything is fleeting, that emotions are temporary, and that true strength is in the mind. He did not expect to feel good automatically. He knew that this was a process of discipline and repetition, and this is exactly what neuroplasticity shows us. Repetition creates change. Consistency shapes the brain. If you practice this every day, you will notice a real change. This does not mean that you will never feel stress or anxiety again, but it does mean that you will have more control over how you react to them. You will notice that you face situations more calmly, that worries no longer dominate you as before that. You can face challenges with more mental clarity. Your brain will be better trained to respond with rationality and not with panic. So don't let the old story of your mind define you. You are not your automatic thoughts. You are not your momentary emotions. You have the power to change. You have the ability to train your brain so that it works in your favor. Neuroplasticity is real, and Stoicism already knew that the mind molds itself with practice. So start today will not be immediate, but every little effort is building a stronger brain. Serene, freer number S. Avoid mental inactivity a long term. The mind, it's like water. If it stays stagnant, it rots. When you don't direct it, when you let it drift, it starts to fill with repetitive thoughts, useless worries and imaginary fears. It's no coincidence that when you're doing nothing negative, thoughts arise with more force. This happens because a mind without direction looks for something to focus on, and often what it finds are anxieties, insecurities, and doubts. The brain at rest is not a brain at rest. Prolonged inactivity does not bring calm, it brings restlessness. Studies confirm this when the mind doesn't have a purpose. Of course, it tends to focus on the negative. This is an evolutionary mechanism. Our brain was designed to detect threats and anticipate problems. If we don't give it something to occupy itself, it will start looking for dangers, even where they don't exist. That's why mental rumination is so common. When we're not doing anything, the thoughts circle around without coming to any conclusion, just consuming our energy and our spirit. The Stoics understood this a long time ago. Centuries they did not believe in the inactivity of the mind. For them, time was a valuable resource that needed to be used with intention. It was not about being busy for the sake of being busy, but about keeping the mind focused on something useful. Marcus Aurelius wrote his reflections every day, not just as a philosophical exercise, but as a way of directing his thinking. Seneca warned about the dangers of mental idleness, about getting carried away by uncontrolled thoughts. Keeping the mind active does not mean filling time with empty distractions. It's not about consuming meaningless content or being constantly entertained. It's about nourishing the mind, challenging and training it to focus on what really matters. Learning something new is one way to do this. Reading, writing, solving problems, developing skills. All this keeps the brain moving, strengthens your resistance to stress, and reduces anxiety. Active meditation is also a powerful tool, and you don't need to sit in silence with your eyes closed to practice it. If this is not for you, you can meditate while walking, while exercising, whilst carrying out everyday tasks. The important thing is to be present, training your mind not to get lost in useless thoughts. Every time you notice that your mind has wandered and back to the present, you are strengthening your ability to concentrate. You are taking control of your mind instead of letting it control you. Solving challenges, logic games, learning a language or a musical instrument are also ways to keep your mind active and in constant development. In addition to making you more skillful, this reduces the mind's tendency to fall into rumination. Science confirms this when the brain is involved in a challenging but possible task. It releases dopamine, which improves mood and motivation. On the other hand, when the mind is inactive for a long time, it increases activity in areas associated with worry and anxiety. Stoicism does not preach hyperactivity or work without rest, but advocates the conscious use of time, not letting the days slip away due to inertia, not allowing that the mind becomes a fertile ground for destructive thoughts. If you find yourself stuck in cycles of worry, in moments of inactivity that only feed your anxiety, change your focus, direct your mind towards something useful, something that makes you grow. It doesn't have to be a big project or a complicated goal. Just small actions that keep your mind moving, that prevent it from getting caught up in negative thoughts. When you take control of your mind, when you choose where to focus your attention, you reduce its tendency to sabotage. Negative thoughts lose strength when you are focused on something bigger than them. It's not about ignoring them, but not giving them space to dominate your day. So move your mind train, use it with intention. Prolonged inactivity brings chaos. Directed action brings clarity, and in that clarity you find freedom. Number 8, practice forgiving yourself. Making mistakes is inevitable. No matter how hard we try to do everything right, at some point we will fail. And when that happens, that voice in our head appears, the voice that judges us mercilessly, that tells us that we are not good enough, that we should have known better, that maybe we don't deserve another chance. But Stoicism teaches us something fundamental. Mistakes do not define us. What defines us is the way we respond to them. You are not the mistake you made. You are the person who learns from it and moves on. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote that guilt is meaningless if it does not lead us to action, eternally feeling bad about a mistake. Don't undo it. Don't change the past. It only binds us to it. If something has gone wrong, the only rational response is to ask, what can I do better next time? And if there is nothing you can do to change, then you need to let go of unnecessary suffering. It is a choice. Epictetus reminds us that it is not the events themselves that affect us, but the interpretation we make of them. If you see your mistake as an eternal damnation, you will live trapped in remorse. But see yourself as a reminder of your humanity, as a lesson in life, then you will emerge strengthened. Self-compassion is not indulgence, is wisdom, means treating yourself with the same understanding you would have with your friend. Science confirms what the Stoics already knew. Self-compassion and self-forgiveness are associated with better mental health. Studies show that people who practice forgiveness reduce their levels of anxiety, depression, and stress, not because they ignore their mistakes, but because they process them in a healthier way. Instead of punishing themselves with negative thoughts, they transform mistakes into learning opportunities. The brain is malleable. Every time you criticize yourself, it strengthens the neural circuit of self-contempt. But every time you practice self-compassion, it strengthens the circuit of resilience over time. Your mind learns to respond differently. It is not an instantaneous change, but it is possible to train your mind to forgive yourself just as easily as you would forgive someone else when they fail. Stop for a moment. Observe the situation without judgment. Ask yourself what I was trying to do in that moment, what I learned from this. Instead of thinking, I am a failure, think this: it was a learning opportunity. Write what happened and what you will do differently next time. Writing helps you process emotions and see mistakes more objectively. Imagine a friend comes up to you and says, you made a mistake. What would you say to him? You would probably reassure him. You would say that we all fail, that the important thing is to learn. Now apply that same advice to yourself. Treat yourself with the same patience and understanding. Constant self-criticism doesn't make you better. It just keeps you stuck in a state of unnecessary suffering. When you practice self-forgiveness, you free yourself from the weight of the past. This does not mean ignoring the consequences of your actions, but facing them maturely. Instead of getting stuck in what was, you create space for what could be, reduces rumination, reduces stress, and allows your mind to focus on the present. Each day is an opportunity to do better. You are not your mistake. You are not your negative thoughts. You are the person who has the ability to learn, grow, and Move forward with more wisdom, so let go of the weight, forgive yourself, and move forward number in creating a positive environment that supports your mental change. Your mind is like a garden. What you plant in it grows. If you surround yourself with negativity, complaints, and purposeless distractions, it will dominate your life. But if you choose to surround yourself with ideas, people, and environments that inspire you, your mind will flourish. Your thoughts will be clearer, strong, and positive. The Stoics understood this very well. Epictetus said that we must be careful with the company we choose because external influences affect our way of thinking and acting. If you spend time with people who are always complaining, who see the world as a hostile and hopeless place, it is inevitable that this energy will permeate you. But if you surround yourself with people who seek to improve, who have perspective, who face challenges calmly and rationally, your way of thinking will also change. Marco Aurelio warned about the importance of what we let into our mind. He said that our souls are dyed by the color of our thoughts. This means that everything we consume, the conversations we participate in, the news, we read the books, we choose the music and entertainment we enjoy poorly, our perception of the world. For better or worse, modern science confirms what the Stoics already knew. Social psychology has shown that we are deeply influenced by the people we spend the most time with. If your friends and family have a pessimistic mindset and reinforce negative ideas, your brain will begin to adopt these thought patterns. But if you surround yourself with people who do a more balanced and constructive view, your mindset will adjust in this direction. Studies in neuroscience show that the content we consume affects our brain chemistry. Constant exposure to alarming news, social networks full of conflict or empty entertainment can increase levels of cortisol. The stress hormone, on the other hand, consuming enriching content such as books that expand our mind, meaningful conversations and art that inspires, activates neural circuits associated with calm and creativity, resilience. If you want to improve your mental state, start by organizing your environment. Observe the people you interact with the most. Do they inspire you or drain you? This does not mean cutting ties radically, but rather establishing limits. Decide how much time and energy you are willing to dedicate to relationships that do not make you grow. At the same time, actively seek out people who reflect the mentality you want to cultivate. The same goes for the information you consume. Ask yourself, this content leaves me with more clarity and motivation, or just me fills with mental noise. It's not about avoiding reality or living in a bubble of unrealistic optimism, but about being aware of how the information you consume impacts your emotional state. Make changes instead of starting the day with alarming news. Read something that inspires you instead of letting negativity dominate your conversations. Direct the dialogue towards more constructive topics. If you spend time on social media, follow accounts that offer knowledge and perspective instead of superficial or conflictual content. The environment you build does not influence only your mind, but also your emotions. When you reduce your exposure to stimuli that generate anxiety and increase your contact with stimuli that promote tranquility and learning, your emotional well-being improves. You begin to notice fewer negative thoughts and more mental clarity. If you want to change your life, start by changing what allows you to enter your mind. Surround yourself with people who uplift you, consume content that strengthens you. Create a space where peace and personal growth can flourish, because in your environment not only reflects who you are, but also who you can become. Number 10. Understand the origin of negative thoughts. Your mind is not a faithful reflection of reality. It is a filter. Everything you think, you feel, and experience first passes through the lens of your interpretation. When something happens, you do not react to the event itself, but the story that your mind creates about that event. That story may be accurate or may be distorted by beliefs, fears, and past experiences. This is where negative thoughts are born. They are not a reflection of reality, but of form, how we perceive it. Epictetus already said that centuries ago, it does not affect us what happens, but what we tell ourselves about what happens. The same event can generate completely different responses in different people. A layoff from work, for example, can be seen as a tragedy, an injustice, or an opportunity for growth. It is not the event itself that causes suffering. It is the interpretation we give to it, and if we learn to change our interpretation, we change our experience. Modern psychology confirmed what the Stoics already knew to cognitive behavioral therapy. One of the most effective against anxiety and depression is based on the idea that our thoughts directly influence our emotions. If you always interpret situations in the worst possible way, your mind will be stuck in a cycle of negativity. But if you learn to question these thoughts and see things more clearly, you can reduce their impact. Negative thoughts often arise because we assume things without questioning them. If something goes wrong, we think everything is fine. Lost. If someone criticizes us, we assume that we are incompetent. If we fail at something, we interpret it as proof that we will never succeed. But what happens if you challenge these thoughts, and if you stop and ask yourself, is this really true? Is there another way of looking at this situation? Imagine that you make a mistake at work. Your mind can immediately say, I am a failure. They will definitely fire me. But if you apply Stoic thinking, you stop and analyze. Is this really a failure or just a one-off mistake? I have made mistakes before and I learned from them. I was fired every time I made a mistake. When doing this, you realize that your mind was exaggerating and negative thinking loses strength. Changing your perspective does not mean ignoring reality or fooling yourself with empty optimism. It means training your mind to see things as they really are, without the distortions of fear and insecurity. The Stoics practiced an exercise called seeing things from above. Imagine that you look at your life from afar, as if you were an external observer from that perspective. The problems, what seemed giants, become smaller. You realize that many worries are temporary and that you have more control than you think. When you learn to question your negative thoughts, you begin to notice a change. You no longer react immediately with fear or frustration. Instead, you take a breather. You observe the situation calmly and choose a more rational interpretation, and by doing this, you reduce unnecessary emotional burden. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can control the story you tell yourself about these events, and when you change this story, it changes your experience. So the next time a negative thought arises, don't take it as an absolute truth. Observe the question and choose the perspective that helps you move forward and not paralyze you. Because in the end, the power of your thoughts is not in the events themselves, but in the way you decide to interpret them. Number 11, training your attention to dominate the mind. Your mind is like a dog. Without a leash, if you never train it, it will run after any stimulus. It will react to anything. Noise will allow itself to be carried away by uncontrollable impulses. But if you learn to guide it, if you give it structure, it will become obedient, focused, disciplined. Most people live trapped in an uncontrolled mind, jumping from one thought to another, dragged by your emotions, without realizing that you have the ability to regain control. You are not a slave to your thoughts. You can train your attention to direct it where you really want. Epictetus said that the free man is the one who masters himself, and mastery begins with the attention. If every thought that arises controls you, then you are a prisoner of your own mind. But if you can observe your thoughts without reacting automatically, then you begin to be free. You cannot avoid them, but you can decide whether to follow them or let them pass. That is the difference between a trained mind and a chaotic mind. Neuroscience has already proven that attention shapes the structure of the brain. What you repeatedly focus on becomes stronger if you constantly focus on worries. It reinforces neural connections of negativity, and negativity becomes automatic. But if you train your attention to focus on the useful, in what is in your control, Then you create new connections that strengthen your mental clarity and your emotional stability. The mind is not fixed. It changes according to the use you make of it. Most people don't even notice how their attention is hijacked by irrelevant thoughts. They go from a painful memory to a future worry without noticing that they are trapped in a mental cycle to train attention. The first step is to realize where it is going. Observe your thoughts without identifying with them. You are not what you think a thought is, just a thought. An electrical impulse in the brain. It has no more power than what you give it. When a negative thought arises, do not follow it automatically. Imagine it is a notification on your cell phone. You can open it and get lost in it, or simply ignore it and continue. What attention was doing is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. If each time your mind slowly bring it back to the present, you will be training your attention. At first it will be difficult, but over time it will become natural and effective technique. For this is to anchor your attention in the breath. When you realize that a negative thought has taken control, take your attention to the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. The breath is always in the present. It does not belong to the past or the future. Each time you return to it, it gives your mind a break, an opportunity to break out of the cycle of worry. Another way to train your attention is questioning your automatic thoughts. If your mind tells you this, it will go wrong. Stop and ask, is this a fact or just an assumption? Do not accept each thought as an absolute truth. Analyze it. Question your logic. Seek alternatives. The uncontrolled mind believes everything. It thinks. The trained mind questions, observes, chooses. When you train your attention, you realize that negative thoughts lose strength, not because they disappear, but because they stop affecting you in the same way. You no longer react with the same intensity. Learn to give space to these thoughts without them controlling you. And over time, your mind becomes calmer, clearer, more resilient. True freedom is not doing what you want, it's being master of yourself. Mastering your attention is the first step to mastering your mind. And when you master your mind, no thought has power over you. I sincerely hope this message has been helpful. I want to sincerely congratulate you for getting this far and completing the video. This means you want to improve as a person. If you like the video, leave your comment. If you don't know what to comment gratitude. That way I'll know you watched until the end. If you're not yet subscribed, hello, what are you waiting for? And come on over and join us Stoics like this that are applicable to us. I encourage you to learn about philosophy. I leave here 2 videos full of Stoic wisdom so you can continue learning. Until next time.